Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today, you're here to learn about llamas, and I'm super excited about this topic. I know llamas are very popular right now for, I would say, from the fashion side of things. There's lots of llamas on different things, but if you've ever really stopped to study a llama, they truly are fascinating animals. And so I'm super excited to learn more about llamas myself. And today I'm joined by 4-H Extension Educator Rebecca Wilkins, who will be presenting. Rebecca is located in Harrison County. And then we also have an Ag and Natural Resources, or Agriculture and Natural Resources, as well as Community Development Educator, Gina Anderson from Floyd County, who will be presenting with us today as well. So I'm going to turn it over to them. As we go along, if you want to type your questions into the chat box, that will help us, and we'll get to those as quick as possible. Keep in mind, with question overload, there might be a chance that all of your questions don't get answered, but feel free to reach out to either presenter at the conclusion via email, and they will be happy to help you get your question answered, as well as myself. Another note, at the conclusion, we will share a Qualtrics link. There are a few counties that are having 4-H youth kind of check in, and they want to see who's taking advantage of these learning opportunities. So we'll share that link for you at the conclusion of the program as well. So I'm going to turn it over so we can let the llama learning begin.
All right, thank you very much, Courtney. As Courtney said, I'm Gina Anderson. I'm the Ag and Natural Resource Educator in Floyd, and Rebecca's the 4-H educator in the neighboring county, and both of us are Rebecca's going to monitor the chat box for me, but we help at the state fair level. So actually, when I started with Extension about 7 years ago, one of the reasons that they liked me a lot was because my parents actually own an alpaca farm. So I know enough to be dangerous about this topic, but both Rebecca and I work the state fair show. So we'll try to answer your questions as best as possible. If we don't have the answers, we'll find the answers. Okay, so as an important side note, when we're talking about llamas, we can talk about the species, and if we're talking about the species to include both llamas and alpacas, we're gonna drop one L. So how I remember it is more L's mean less animals. So the llama itself is the double L. The llama to include the llamas and alpacas is a single L, okay? All right, so what are llamas and alpacas used for? For most of us, we use them for 4-H. We might use them for fiber production. They could be guard animals. Llamas are actually better guard animals than alpacas are, but both are very observant of their surroundings and like to know what's happening. For instance, my parents had deer the other day, not too far from the fence, and a lot of our animals were watching them because they couldn't exactly see them, but they knew they were there. So they're very protective of their surroundings. Some people just have them as pets. They could be used for open class competitions. So if you like to do the open class circuits, they may be used for that. Not really here in the States, unless it's a specialty meat, but in South America, they're raised for meat consumption. Okay. Oh, I will figure out which way my computer's gonna go here. Okay, so pet and fiber animals, they probably don't have the best body condition. So if you're familiar with showing other livestock, you know that they will check body condition. We're not looking for that necessarily for pet and fiber animals. These animals should be gentle though. You don't want a pet that is going to spit and bite. They should be able to be on a halter and be led. And then you do not have to register this animal. So most livestock does have to be registered. Llamas and alpacas don't necessarily have to be registered, but unless you're gonna show them, okay? So pack and performance animals, again, this is just another aspect of owning animals if you show them for competition and stuff. Or you could use them out on the trail. So if you were to go hiking, you can put packs on them just like you would a donkey or a mule. They should have excellent body condition. They should be gentle. They should have had a large amount of training. They also don't need to be registered. Herd guard animals, they should have good to excellent body condition because you're gonna assume that they are also going to to fend off any predators. If you have a coyote that gets in your pen, that they're going to be able to fight them off, or a pack of dogs or whatever else might get in your pen that is not wanted there, that you want them to be able to fight that other animal off. They should be a bit shy. So they really should not want to be touched by humans or be really close to humans. They should also be halter and lead broke. So again, they want them to be close to humans, but not so much that they're overly friendly. Because if they're overly friendly, then they won't be as good as guard animal. They don't need to be registered, but they should be gelded. So they should not be able to reproduce. So our breed and our show animals, they're very good to excellent body condition. They can be groomed and handled. They're halter and lead broke. They will stand, so they won't fidget a whole lot. They can load in a trailer easily, as you all should know if you have other animals. Sometimes animals get a little difficult when loading into a trailer. So you want to practice loading your animals in a trailer so that it does not become difficult. Although llamas and alpacas don't necessarily have to ride in a trailer. There are many people that I know that use their vehicle and transport them that way. So they'll sit in the back of a minivan. Our former 4-H educator had a little like Toyota Camry, and the alpaca rode in the back seat and would stick his head out the window when she would go through the drive-through. So there's lots of different ways to transport the animals as long as they're done safely. The breed and show animals also have to be registered. So you can do this through like the Indiana Llama Indiana Llama registration. There's a few different areas which you could register. You don't have to register in all the different ones. I do know though, if you show it North American, it does have to be registered, and you'll have to check with North American to verify what kind of registration they want on the animal. So how do you tell the two apart? So llamas have banana-shaped ears. They kind of stand more upright on their head. They're bigger. They can be by themselves. They have a longer face. They're a straighter back. They also stand between 5.5 and 6 foot tall. So that puts them at a weight between 250 and 450 pounds. Your alpacas, they're smaller. So they cap out about 175 pounds. You have two different types of alpacas actually. So we have the Surrey, and their fiber grows in ringlets, okay? And then the Waiku has a short fiber, and they look more like a teddy bear. So this next slide, you should be able to see the animal on your left that's standing real upright. That is a llama. You can see kind of how elongated their face is. The alpaca is on the right. You can see that they are a bit shorter statured. And the one in the picture is a Waiku. So that one is more like the teddy bear shaped or fiber, okay? So how do we care for them? Well, we need to provide shelter depending on the animal. So the guard, if it's a guard llama, you'd only probably have one of them and they would need some kind of stall. Your alpacas need to have 2 or more. So they're a pack animal and they like to be with others, not just other animals, but others in their species. And they'll actually do a humming noise to check to see who's there with their species. So their shelter should be at least 3 sides. If it's a 4-sided structure, it does need to have doors and windows on it so that they can kind of see out and even allow them to kind of come in. Or if you're going to shear them, this is what we run into a lot because our animals like to hang out outside, which is good, but they'll hang out right before shearing and they'll get dew on their fiber and stuff. So if we're going to shear those animals, we need to be sure that whatever structure they're staying in has doors on it that we can close to keep them inside so that when we're shearing, their fibers actually dry because it's hard to shear them with wet fiber. If we have male llamas, if we have 5 to 6 of them, they need a 12 by 12 foot structure. Females with cria, so 6 female llamas with a cria, a 12 by 16 foot, cut those in half for alpacas. So remember, alpacas are about half the size of llamas, so we would cut those structures in half. For fencing, it should be at least 4 foot high for llamas and 5 foot high for alpacas. So alpacas really can jump. We have several that we have the 5-foot fence and they can get up on their back legs and get their front legs up and over the fence. So we try to get it as high as possible. If you have 6-foot fencing, that's even better because it does allow for the exclusion of other animals. We'll talk later, but white-tailed deer actually are carriers of a disease or a parasite for llamas and alpacas. So the more animals we can exclude from the pasture, the better off we are. We don't want any barbed wire. So this animal is meant for fiber production. That fiber gets caught in the barbed wire. It's either gonna rip out fur and leave a bare spot in the animal, or the animal's gonna get so tangled up that it can't get out. So we don't want any barbed wire at all. For the hygiene, we do have to shear these animals. So llamas get sheared for the most part only in their stomach area. It's called the barrel shear. So their necks are usually left, and then around their feet. For alpacas, we shear everything off. So it comes off in a blanket, kind of like a sheep. So the stomach and the back is considered the first cutting, and it really does come off just like a blanket. And then we do the neck and the tops of the legs, and that's called the seconds. And then down by the bottom of the feet is considered the thirds. For the alpacas, we will leave kind of a tuft on the top of their head, but we do have to trim those up because just like us, their hair grows. And I know that my parents have one that if we do not trim her little palm on the top of her head, she'll never see because her hair grows out so fast that you can never see her eyes because it grows up above her eyes. Their foot trimming, this may be an annual or a semi-annual event, and I call it an event because depending on how well you handle your animal and how well your animal likes being handled, it could be really easy or it could be kind of difficult. White animals tend to need their hooves trimmed more frequently than the darker animals. We do ours when we shear, and then we check them a couple times a year. We do have one animal that she does what's called cushioning. So she'll sit down on her feet. And actually that works out better for us because she likes to fight us when it's time to trim her nails. So if she's cushed for us, we can kind of like roll her to a side and pull her hooves out and trim them while she's on the ground. And then we're not straining ourselves and she's not freaked out a lot because she's on the ground and she feels really good about it. Because when you're shearing, those are most animals like that, livestock, they don't like being off balance. They're not used to not having all 4 hooves on the ground. So for alpacas and llamas, what we do is we put our knee up in what's called their chest plate to help them balance, which if you have, 150 pound animal and you're trying to help it balance and they're fighting you because they don't want their hooves trimmed, it can be a little awkward and stuff. So we kind of like it when our animals cush for hoof trimming because then we don't have to manage their weight and our balance and trying to make sure that no one falls. They also need their teeth trimmed every once in a while. So their teeth are always growing. They will have to come in with like a Dremel bit or something like that and come off the top of their teeth, because if they don't, they can grow up past their top lips and stuff and create damage. The males also have what's called fighting teeth. So those are kind of like molars that have hooks on them. And we remove those as well after, I think it's like age 2. If we don't remove them and they start to fight with other males or other females in the pen, then lots of damage can happen because those hooks get caught and they don't just rip fiber out, they'll rip muscle tissue. And sometimes you have to go back in more than once. So we have to check their gums about once a year to see if those teeth have grown back. And those are kind of some hygienes that we need to keep in mind. So this is a video that I'm gonna try desperately to play. And this is a way that you can tie your animal up just as maybe you're brushing the animal or something like that. You wouldn't use this for shearing unless your animal really liked being sheared. For shearing, lots of different methods happen there. They don't necessarily stand like a sheep does whenever you're shearing a sheep. We use a table, so we can actually take our animal and kind of put them parallel to a table, and the table flips and we can strap them to the table and kind of flip them. But this is a good Slipknot, so hopefully the sound is up.
All right, something important that you should probably do and always know how to do on your farm is the correct slip knot so that you can keep the animal secure before you do toenails or groom or anything like that. So Gabriella is going to demonstrate for us how to do the proper slip knot. So you loop it over, pull it through, and then just pull it tight like that. And they can't get out of it. They're nice and secure. And then if something was to happen, they get caught, show them how easily you can undo it, G. There you go.
And so Rebecca and I were talking about this, and she's like, well, if that was a horse, they might pull off the door front. So this was done by a 4-H family. They were just helping us out to do this. This is where they were able to tie their animal off to. You would probably do it to a fence where they probably wouldn't do as much damage. But if you needed to groom the animal and the animal is getting kind of antsy, this is a way that you could use that slip knot to tie them off, just so that it will probably stand still a little bit.
All right.
Okay, so this one is Hoof Care, and there's a couple different trimmers that they're going to show you. The Simpsons, if you're familiar with the Simpsons, we can credit them for some of these videos, and then we have another family, the Haberlands, that help do these videos. I promise I will figure out where play is.
All right, I'm gonna do a quick little video on how to clip their toenails. Jeremy has 2 different clippers here, hold them up. And the turquoisey green pair, those are you can get at any Tractor Supply. The orange pair came from Useful Llama Items, I believe, and they both run around anywhere from, I believe, 14 to 20. The yellow, or the orange pair, I like a little bit better, and then any place like Sullivan will sharpen them for you because they will get dull. So just be very careful. They're pointy, extremely sharp. So Jeremy's going to demonstrate for us how to do clip a toenail, and this is Hoot Nanny. It's really nice if they know how to lift their feet. So the first thing you're gonna do is try to scrape out if you have any gravel or junk in there. I'm gonna try to get in as close as I can. As you can see, the toenail goes right along the soft pad. So basically all you wanna do is make sure that the toenail's not growing over there, not bending, and you just clip away. It's just like nail clippers. And we do both sides, just like that. Make sure you have some blood stop or anything. Cornstarch will work. I think I've used baking powder before in case you get it too close. They usually don't fight too much if you clip them unless it's too bad. And that's about it. His were pretty short as it was. And I'm just gonna zoom in there. You can see how they're nice and flush on the side. So when he's walking, he's not stepping on the toenail, not causing any pain.
And so this is one, like if you had your pasture and you had some gravel or something, that actually helps keep those toenails down a little bit, because as they're walking across those hard surfaces, it kind of helps file the nails down. But like Caitlin said, you know, we want to keep those clean, those gap areas, because if they were to have a rock or something caught in there, they could step wrong and then, you know, damage a tendon or something like that. So that's why hoof care is important.
All right.
Okay, and then Caitlin also did a grooming one. So let's get this one going here.
I was going to demonstrate the curry comb, what I mean. It gets from where they stick their head in the hay feeder all year long. It gets a lot of that gunk out. But like I said, if you're saving their fiber, if you're going to make something fancy out of it, probably not the best tool. Or if you're going to go into a fiber class, a lot of them, the judges don't like these for that. And then Gabriella has the slicker comb. I was going to show you, it doesn't go very deep, but once you get all this out, it does a really good job of just kind of smoothing everything down, making it look really nice before you go into your showmanship class. So this is kind of like their last tool that they use right before they go into any class.
So as you can see with the llamas and alpacas, their fiber creates a bigger problem, especially if you're going to use that fiber later on, because it is, you know, essentially a byproduct of owning the animal. They, like other animals, roll in the hay, they stick their heads in it, and they end up wearing hay all over their head and stuff. If you're near a wooded area, they get burrs in their fur, all that, well, it's very hard to get it out, especially if you want to be able to use that fiber later on. So you can use the different combs. Actually, before we shear our animals, we've been known to take not like a leaf, but some kind of like shop vac or something like that, and try to suck off or blow off as much as we can. Because if you send it off to a processor and it's full of junk, it costs you more to have it processed because they have to clean it more, or they're going to tell you that it's so full of stuff that they're not even going to handle it and they're going to pitch it. So we try to keep our animals as clean as possible in that regard. If you have white animals, they're inevitably going to get dirty because they go and find dirt pits. So just like pigs will use kind of dirt hollows to roll around in to cover themselves to help them from getting sunburnt, white alpacas will do the same thing because they're more sensitive to the sun. So they will go and find a dirt patch and roll in it. The dark ones do as well. It just shows up a whole lot more on the white ones. So there's different ways of grooming. Also, in grooming them, sometimes people do shampoo them, so you can buy special shampoos and stuff to use on them. I know we don't, but our animals don't go to show that often. Our animals do get sprayed down though. So in the summer, even though they've been sheared, it gets very hot, as you all know. So ours like to play in the water. So we do have to be careful when we're spraying them. We always try to spray their chest plate down because we're trying to keep their body temperature cool. And we spray some of their feet down. We do have a few that decide that no matter the season that they're always going to be hot. It's not really that they're hot. They're just kind of being boys and playing in water and stuff. And so they'll stick their hooves in their water. Well, that will do damage to their fiber and it will not, it'll stop growing and stuff if they do it enough. So just be aware of that. If your animals need spray down and stuff, you can, it's not like terrible damage, but it does make the fiber stop growing in certain areas if they continually stay wet in an area.
I was going to demonstrate the curry comb.
I'm going to do that again. Okay. And this is kind of what the grooming bucket looks like. So they have, it looks like 5 different combs that they might use. In the back, you can see their, the air express. So they will blow out their animals as well to help get some of that extra gunk off of them. And then after they shampoo their animals and wash them down, they do dry them. That way they don't get sick and the fur doesn't get all nasty. So they do essentially blow dry their llamas and alpacas. So for nutrition, we have to make sure they have plenty of water. In the summer, we do put electrolytes in our tanks, which does kind of look funny because it's usually pink. And some of them put their muzzles in right as we drop in the pink, so they come out looking like they have pink lipstick on. But we do add electrolytes in the summer. Their daily protein requirement is about 10% of their diet. And they do eat a lot of hay, so they are grazers. And when they graze, they will graze it down to the stub. So make sure that you have rotational grazing set up, or else you'll run out of pasture before you know it. The forages that can be consumed are the broom grass, the oat hay, the orchard grass, and the clover and alfalfa. They can do in some sense, but if they have too much of it, they can become obese. So you do have to watch out. They can get, they'll eat too fast and then they'll start to choke. So just everything needs to be in the right proportions. They do need phosphorus and calcium and selenium, copper, and zinc in their diet as well. So for most of that, they're going to get anyway. You don't really have to supplement it. We feed ours once a day, so they're going to get those extra minerals in their feed. You can buy an alpaca mix. It's not like cracked corn and stuff. It's a specific alpaca llama mix. And I think Missouri is the only company that really makes it. But most of the feed companies sell it or can get it for you or can find out what the recipe is and make it for you depending on how much you need. And so when we're talking about health and stuff, not everyone owns an animal that lives like on a 100-acre farm or whatever, where maybe some of these plants aren't a problem, but there are plants that are problematic for lots of livestock. These are specific for llamas and alpacas. So black locust is a harmful plant. That's a tree that we find in most of our wooded areas. Castor beans, rhododendrons, wisteria, those are all problematic plants. So if you are in an area where you can let your animals roam freely and not worry about them running off somewhere, if these plants are around, that could be a problem. Some more plants would be oleander. Again, unless they're going to be on your front porch, I really doubt they're going to get a hold of an oleander. But trumpet vine is a native vine. So if they're somewhere near a wooded area and there's trumpet vine, that could be harmful to them. Azaleas, yews. So if you have a home that has lots of yews around them and the animals are allowed to come near the homes, or if you're practicing with the animals and you're walking them out near the house, make sure that they're not going to graze on any of the plants around the house. Purple foxglove as well is also a poisonous plant. Just a few others would be lantana, wild cherry, but that's toxic to all livestock. Milkweed, buttercups, we know. Nightshades, so do watch your pasture for nightshade. Tomatoes, potatoes are in the nightshade family. There's another nightshade weed, and that's what's pictured. Those are poisonous. Our goats don't eat it, you know, all that. So watch your pasture for those. Others that might show up in your pasture would be spurges, mushrooms, poison hemlock. We've seen a lot of that in the state in the last few years. So that would be, kind of looks like Queen Anne's lace or wild carrot, except on the stem it has purple dots. But talk to your county educators to make sure you're identifying it properly. Tansy, ragwort, Jimson weed, and groundsel are all common weeds. Well, weeds are just a plant in the wrong spot, but these are all plants that would be poisonous to your animals if they're in the pasture. Tomatoes, again, they're in the nightshade family. Daffodils, May apples are poisonous, and then English ivy. So some common parasites, you can see that there's a lot of common parasites, but these would not be anything that you probably wouldn't see in your other livestock as well. So Strongylus, that causes weight loss and diarrhea. We have whipworms, we have roundworms, tapeworms, coccidia, that would cause diarrhea and weight loss in the animal. We have liver fluke, toxoplasma, yep, I can't say half these, and I'm not even gonna try anymore, but that one is caused by cat feces. So this is one that pregnant females can get if they're cleaning a cat's litter box, and think that can also happen to your animals. It actually caused us to lose a few animals a few years ago. Back before my mom ever got animals, we had cats. So we were dumping the litter pan in the woods. Well, then when she decided to get animals, we cleared out the woods, the litter, and the parasites from the cat litter were still in the ground. It never even crossed our mind. And then, you know, the animals were grazing where we used to dump the cat litter, and they picked up that parasite, and it caused, we didn't lose any adult animals, but we lost several babies that way, where the females aborted their pregnancies because of that. So that is one that I was actually kind of surprised in Caitlin's video that there's a barn cat there, because the animals can get this from cat feces, just like we can. Lights and mites are all common. Meningeal worms. So we talked about white-tailed deer, that we're trying to exclude the white-tailed deer, and that's because they can carry the meningeal worm. It actually comes from snails. Deer eat the snails. Deer get in the pasture. It's this big cycle. So people are very worried about snails in their pasture. I don't know how you would exclude snails unless you treated your whole pasture with diatomaceous earth. But then that would be bad, because if your animals are eating them right after you apply the diatomaceous earth, it would cut their gums, because diatomaceous earth is very sharp. It's crunched up like seed material. So I don't know how we avoid the snail issue, but if we can exclude the deer, that does help with the meningeal worms. So what could you do as an animal owner? It's disease and parasite prevention. You're going to treat with dewormers. You're going to give vaccines when needed. So we actually deworm our animals every month, because we know that we have white-tailed deer. my parents own 16 acres. Most of it's wooded. We're not going to exclude the white-tailed deer completely because they're gonna, they're gonna do their thing, and they may jump the fence, and they may not, but because they're around, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna treat every month for worms. The CD&T, that we do every 6 months. We keep really good health records, so each animal, mom has written down their name, when they got which vaccines and stuff. Just be careful when giving vaccines and stuff, and know how to handle your animal, because I've gotten a concussion once from our animals when we were giving dewormer. It's not that our animals are misbehaved, they just, like most young kids and probably most adults, don't like taking medication, and their necks are full of that's a whole big muscle. Their neck is all muscle, and when you come up behind them and they clock you right in the middle of the forehead, you end up with a mild concussion when giving dewormer. So know your animal, know how to treat them. Maybe you can find a better way to treat them than we can, but we give them oral medication. Then what would your veterinarian do? So that's going to be the thing, is finding a veterinarian that's willing to treat animals in the camelid family. Some feel comfortable with it, some do not. Where I live at down here in Floyd County, we do have a vet that went to the Ohio State when they started giving seminars on camelids and took a lot of classes. I know back home where my parents live, our vet feels comfortable in working with camelids, so that's not a problem. You just have to talk to your vet to find out, and you may have to ask around to several vets before you find one that's willing to treat camelids. So this is one that needs to confirm parasite loads. Lots of people like to use FAMACHA, which is looking at the mucus around the eye, which is a tool that people use to determine kind of worm count, or not worm counts, but determine if your animal has a worm or a parasite, and it's a tool. So it's best before treating that if you feel your animal has worms to confirm. Some people feel comfortable doing that worm fecal count at home, others send it off, but the FAMACHA is just a tool. So it's really good to talk to your vet to find out how they feel you should proceed with treatments. They're gonna check your animal's overall health. They're gonna do care of deep wounds. We've had it before. We had a piece of fence or something somehow, and one of the animals caught their eye on it or something and had to wear the cone of shame for a few weeks. But that was not a thing that we could treat. The vet needed to come out and make sure that there wasn't any extra damage and treat it to make sure there was no infection before the cone of shame was inserted, which if you've not seen a llama or alpaca in the cone of shame, it is kind of funny. But it does help because when they feed, they're like little piranhas. So he had the best case scenario because his little cone fit over his bowl. So no one could fight him for his food because no one could see his food. But that's kind of what your vet should do. Rebecca, do we have any questions before we jump to the 4-H section?
I think we have a question about what kind of stomachs llamas and alpacas have. So I guess the question is, are they monogastric or are they multigastric?
So they have multiple stomachs. They, like cows chew cud and stuff, they can bring food back up and re-chew it. So what I didn't tell you all yet was their defense mechanism. So actually in the video where the cat showed up, I was kind of surprised. Hootenanny is obviously familiar with that cat. But llamas and alpacas, their biggest defense is kicking. So they'll kick backwards. A lot of people forget that. And if I'm around, I will be yelling at kids left and right to stay away from the animal's back end because I don't want those kids getting kicked if the animal gets spooked. So they'll kick straight back. Their other defense is to spit. And it is not a pleasant smell, as you can imagine. It's coming from their stomach and it smells horrible. And it's green and it's nasty. I have been the recipient, not necessarily directly in my face. That has been my father though. Luckily he had glasses on and got like legit covered his whole face, his glasses, everything. So those are kind of their defense mechanisms. But yes, they do have multiple stomachs for their digestion. Okay, if you have more questions, drop them in the chat box. I'll cover them. We're gonna kind of jump into a 4-H section. Let's see here. Okay, so this is Morgan, and I don't know which animal it is, but you can see that she's trying to work her animal, and I'll apologize, the video's a little grainy, but it works. So she's actually trying to get her animal to walk through the water, and you can see he's given her a bit of a struggle because that lead rope's a little tight there. So you kind of have to know what your animal is going to do. You have to learn your animal. And when he starts to fight, you know, she kind of just needs to back off a little bit because he doesn't want to go. So if they start to fight you, don't fight with them a whole lot because they're going to get stressed and it's going to stress you out. So knowing what their limits are, my parents have an animal, and she really enjoys the limelight. She likes it when people are watching her. She's very much a diva. And we told this to one of our 4-Hers that showed her a few years ago when we first started showing alpacas in my home county. And we're like, she's gonna lay down because she's gonna see all these people. And sure enough, she gets out in the middle of the arena and sees like 200 people watching her. Instead of doing what she needed to do for the show, she laid down because she was the center of attention. So you kind of have to know each of these animals has a different personality, and knowing what those personalities are going to do in certain situations really helps to you as a showman, and just as an animal owner, so that you know what's going on. We have an animal at my parents' house who is very much a dominant male, even though he has been gelded. He does not like to be disciplined, so they will start fights with each other. And he does not like to be reprimanded and told to back off. And he has bit my mother more than once. So kind of knowing those personalities is helpful. We have a very dominant female who apparently finds me as a threat. And every time I'm in the pen, especially if I have like a hoodie on, she'll come up behind me and she'll start yanking on my hoodie to try to choke me, to tell me that she's the dominant female. So kind of knowing those behaviors is a good, just a good practice. So then we have animal control. So this is another one of Morgan that you can see. She's got kind of a good lead, and they can kind of read each other. Morgan's being calm and the animal's being calm, and they can walk pretty well together. And when she stops, he's realizing that he can stop as well. And this is kind of how you would walk your animal in the show ring. Typically you keep a bit of a J on there, so he must have been going a little fast, so she tightened up her lead, but typically you want a J. For llamas and alpacas, you want, that J in your lead. And then this one, she's gonna walk him around the burn pile, and you can see again, he's feeling comfortable. Her hand's not right up on his lead, it's farther away, and they can kind of walk together in that regards. All right. Maybe, there we go. So then obstacles. So if you're looking at a 4-H show, there's different events that you can be part of. So there's the costume, and you get points for however many, if you can get your whole animal covered in a costume or not, and how much fiber you can make disappear underneath the costume. The best one I've helped with was a Yoda, and we covered the whole animal. That was the best one I've ever helped with. But there's pack, where you put a pack on your animal and they have to go through some obstacles. And then there's what's called an obstacle course. So this would be how Morgan would work her animal around an obstacle. So they're gonna approach it and the animal can see it. So those are actually their chickens. He hesitates for just a second because he needs to see what the chickens are. Once he realizes what they are, it's usually not a problem. If there's water in an obstacle, lots of people will take their animal and kind of lead their neck and their nose down to the water so they can see that it's water, and they're usually willing to walk through it if they can kind of tell what it is at the time. So, and then this would be showmanship. So you can see, again, this is your llama on the left. And you can see how each of the two animals act a little bit differently. Hootenanny's probably been to a few more shows than Morgan's has. So Hootenanny is the llama. And Caitlin's acting as the judge. So you'll see Caitlin in the red shirt that she moves around, and Gigi, how she moved to the other side. So when we're showing llamas and alpacas, we're looking at quadrants. I believe the same is true for beef cattle when you're showing them and how they're doing their quadrants when the judge approaches, how the 4-H'er will switch sides to be on the opposite side of the judge. Okay. So you can see how Morgan turns around and she sometimes has to reset the animal's feet, but otherwise that is fine. And if during showmanship, the judge comes to touch your animal, after the judge is done, make sure that you go back through and smooth out the animal's fiber. Okay. So some different ways to connect. There's the Indiana Alpaca Association. There's a llama marketing group on Facebook. There is the Southern Indiana Farm and Livestock Facebook. There's the Hoosier Llama and Alpaca Association. We also have a Facebook page for the Southern Indiana Llama and Alpacas. I forget what all we call it, but if you're interested in that one, you can shoot me a message and we can get you hooked in with that one. Rebecca, what kinds of questions do we have? We have about 15 minutes for questions.
We have a few. Libby would like to know, how long do llamas live for?
Okay, so their lifespan's about 20 years. So my moms, I know how old I am, and we got them when I was in high school. So my moms are actually starting to to hit that lifespan. So it's about 20, 25 years. Okay. What else do we have, Rebecca?
Hold on just a second. What type of wormer is used each month, and at what dosage? Is it per pound or a total percentage?
Okay, so wormers, there's a couple different types of wormers. So like most parasite control, you want to change up what you're using so that you don't create parasites that become resistant. So we use Safeguard, and then we also use Detromax, and we alternate between the two. And I'm not familiar with what I'd have to read the bottle to see what the dosage is, because I just don't know off the top of my head. But yeah, so read the bottle for dosage, but those are kind of what we use. And I think I just saw online where even the Safeguard is now in like a pellet form instead of a paste form. So that may be something as well. So we use the equine Safeguard, and it works just fine. But yeah, so change up what you use. And talk to your vet about what your vet recommends and how frequently he recommends you changing it up so that you don't create resistant parasites. Okay, what else we got?
That's all I have right now. Courtney, maybe you can help me with this one. She said, is there a website to tell your 4-H leader that they were here today?
That'll be the
Qualtrics at the end.
Qualtrics. Okay.
And then I have a question that was sent to me. Why do you have to smooth down the fiber after the judge touches it?
That's just the policy that I've been told, that once the judge touches it, I guess maybe because the judge might ruffle it a little bit, that you're paying attention to what the judge is. You're watching the animal and you're watching the judge, so you're just coming back through and showing the judge that you're paying attention by smoothing it back out.
Yeah, probably like cattle, it probably just makes them look nicer and they don't have any holes in their hair after you work hard to get it to look like how you want it.
Right.
Someone else asked, how much room do you need for one llama? How big of pen? And there's a couple questions. You can get a llama for guarding.
Correct.
Yes.
So you get a llama for guarding, and so they probably wouldn't need a huge spot because that's assuming that you have other animals. So they'll probably just need a small shelter to stay in. Knowing that they get 6 foot tall, I would say get a 7 foot shelter with at least 3 sides so they can get out of the weather.
Okay. How about, are alpacas good for guarding?
They are, but again, they're a pack animal, so they want to be with others. So ours, they guard in a sense, and I think they would probably, if an animal got it in there, they might attack it, but that's not their first instinct. Their first instinct is to set off a warning call. let everyone in the neighborhood know that something doesn't belong. They're very watchful. So both llamas and alpacas are very watchful. I've had friends come that the animals have never seen before, and we were walking outside their pen and they were tracking us the whole time because they knew that there was someone there that didn't belong. They do the same with cats, with just about anything. So the alpacas just have a friendlier nature, so they just wouldn't be as good of a guard animal as a llama would be. What else do we got?
That's all I see on my end.
Okay.
So I do have one question. Do llamas like to be in groups, or can they be alone?
Llamas can be alone, so they're not necessarily a pack animal. They can be alone.
Okay, and I have one that just came in. We have 2 male alpacas that we've tried 3 times to put in the same area, and they spit and chase each other and seem to hate one another. Should we try them together again or not? They're both males and gelded.
Interesting. I guess try it again, but maybe have people hold on to them. Like, don't just poof, let them loose. Like, kind of slowly integrate them and see, I guess, kind of like cats where you're trying to do that. And maybe they're both feel like they're dominant males and they may never get along. I don't know. We have a couple bullies in our group, and that we just deal with it. Everyone learns to coexist, but at this point, all of our males are gelded for 4-H purposes, and partly because the one was a royal pain in the butt and was very mean, and he's still very mean even after he was gelded. So I guess try it one more time and see. And maybe they're confused about what gender the other one is, and they're also maybe trying to mate, would be my other thought, because when they're trying to mate, they're not very friendly sometimes to the females. So that could also be a possibility. Other questions?
That's all that I have. I'm going to share in the chat box the link as well, so you can copy and paste that and go directly there. And again, this just helps us to see who's checking out our programs. We will have more coming your way in the next couple months. So next week, we're going to learn about managing our 4-H sheep projects. So that should be a good one, and that will be May 5th. All of these take place on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Central. And again, they all are recorded, so if you have school or another priority that day, you can find them on our 4-H YouTube channel, and they're there for your viewing, and you can review if you didn't catch something or want to ask one of the speakers a question. You can always check in there and get their contact information that way too. So be sure to help us out. I will stay on a little bit longer just so everybody has time to copy that link, but I'll let Gina and Rebecca finish out here, and then I'm done on my end. So I've said what I need to say.
It looks like we have one final question. How much water does a llama need per day?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd say that depends on the animal and how hot it is. Again, they're in the camelid family, so if you're familiar with camels, they can go a long time without drinking water. We put out we got creative with our watering system, so we have sinks, like barn sinks or whatever, and that's what we fill for them. And they don't, unless it's a really warm day, they don't usually go through a whole one, and we have about 15 animals. So they have 2 of them set up. They don't usually go through a whole one, but they'll go through about a half a one, and there's 14 animals there. So they don't need a whole lot, but it's kind of hard to gauge how much they actually went through, because ours are a little lower to the ground and they play in them and put their feet in them, and then kick out water or kick out the plug and then cause the sink to drain. So, but if you drop your email or something, or email Courtney that question, I will look, and then I'll send an email back to you with a better answer. Other questions? Did that take care of it? Okay, oh, there you go. Julie got it, and she said 3 to 5 gallons per llama per day. So there you go. Rebecca, do you have anything else you want to add? Okay, well, thank you guys for joining again. If you have other questions that we didn't answer, shoot them to Courtney and she'll get them out to us and we can get back to you. Thanks for joining. And then I know I'll stick around on here for just a little bit longer. Courtney will, Rebecca can, so.
Yep. So if you don't have any questions and you had a chance to copy down the link, you're free to go. And again, we hope to see you next week or the week after or every week that we continue to do this to learn more about our wonderful animal science program as well as the projects that are involved in that particular area. We're hoping that you learned something new. I know I learned a lot today, so I hope that you did too.